Hello and welcome to another chapter of the series Authorization and Authentication for mobile developers, or in fact, all of the examples are done with Flutter and Auth0. So now in this episode or in this chapter, we're going to talk about RBAC, role-based access control. Well, that is very simple concept. The concept is, well, you're going to have roles. You assign permissions to your roles, and then you assign these roles to the customer, to the user. So it's much better than the fact that you directly assign some permissions to an individual user. It's maintainable, way better. So this is a concept that like a lot of developers know, and it's a very standard things to do. So what we're going to do today in this chapter together is to define some roles in Auth0, assign some permissions, create some APIs, assign some permission to those roles, and then assign those roles to the users based on some logic. And then based on those roles and permissions that you receive, then we're going to just show different a screen or widgets in Flutter application. But let's get started talking about RBAC and how we can do that in Auth0. And not Auth0, in fact, in any backend you can do that, but we're going to take Auth0 as an example here as a serverless approach for our authentication and authorization part. So here is the part that we're going to talk about: authorization. You are coming to this video for the first time and you don't know what we're talking about. You need to go back to the playlist and watch the videos about authorization and all those theories and slides that I showed you about, the differences and the different ways that we can, implement those. All right. Theory enough. Let's get back to the code and talk about how we can create those roles and permissions. This is my Auth0 dashboard. So in fact, so you have a user management profile here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So in the user management, you have also roles. This is the one that you're requiring to go there and create some roles. I already created admins, customers, and employee. So I will assign these roles to my, users in any types. But if you need more roles, simple, just create a role, whatever name you want, and give it just the description. So when you create these roles, and you can go to these roles, and you will get 3 tabs. The setting is just the names that you can define, permission tab, and users, those users that are assigned to this. This is nice. So what I want you to take a note here is this role ID, because this is the one, this is the important things that we need when we want to assign a role to a user. We need an ID of that role, and this is the role. So in fact, I will copy this for customer, and I'm gonna copy the ID for employee. There you go. And I'm going to also copy that for admins. Good. So now I have my roles. So you can create more roles. Depends on your application. Go ahead and continue doing that. What we want to do then, it's a very simple logic. I want to go to the actions. You don't know what action is because you have not watched probably the previous video. Watch the Auth0 Actions and see how we used it for logging. But now what we want to do is when user is registered, like the post registration, that is the one that we require. In the post registration, we want to assign a role. That is a custom, let's say, action that I created. So now let's see how you can create this assign role custom one. So let's go back to the role flow library. And then let's go to custom, or maybe you can just create on build custom. So that is what you want to do. You want to say, I want to just assign a role, which when do you want to trigger that? When after user is registered. Okay, that's good. So I know at that point the user ID and everything, and the environment node. That's gonna go like and create this one. Assign role to user. And that's good. So now what I'm gonna do, here is the thing. Let's define our scenario, what we want to do here. First, we need to get an access to the API to be able to update user. So I'm talking about Auth0 API. So any backend that you have will provide some kind of API that you should be able to update, edit, delete user and things like that. So then Auth0 API, like construction, like initiation, let's say. So I need to get this access to this one. And I need to do then later, what I need to do here, I need to have a simple logic for my logic to assign role. And then that's pretty much it. Like you have an API, and then you will, once you have everything, the user management already in place, then you're going to go and have the logic. So how can you do that? Okay. Let's follow me here. It's fairly simple in Auth0, but this part, the first part, is like very dedicated for Auth0, but you can do it differently in any backend. But the concept is similar. The concept is very similar. What we want to do here, we're gonna go and define our we will use Auth0 SDK. What is the environment, the running environment here? The runtime is Node, right? We're gonna use Auth0 package. So if you remember, you can go here and you can add your Auth0 client. Do we want the latest version? Maybe, that's okay. So then you can even define a different version, like maybe you can go for a particular version if you want. Like, let's say if you want version 2.35.y, whatever. You definitely can check that on npm, right? And you search it. There you go. And here is the package. And now it's actually 2.40. So I can actually go and then here copy this and say, this is my dependency. Well, that's nice. So I add my dependency here. So then first thing you need to do, you need to authenticate your client. You need to create a client here. Well, let's see what you should do. Let's name it authentication client. And in Auth0, you're going to have required Auth0. Well, you can also do it this way. Let's see. You can say const Auth0 require this, and then you want to do the authentication part. I mean, you can do Auth0 dot, that is going to be authentication client, and that's probably capital. Yeah, there you go. There is the constructor. So what you need to do here, this is a class, this is a constructor. So it's better for me to name it like that. Or, well, you can just simply ignore this and use this. Let's move on. So here, what I want to do here is to initiate or initialize this constructor. So I'm going to create my Auth0 client. There you go. So how in JavaScript, you're just going to go and use new keyword and then this constructor. Right. This constructor, though, accept a few parameters which you need to pass. The three of them are very important. You pass an object there, and you need to pass domain. Okay, domain. something here. You need to pass client ID. I'll talk about it. And you need to pass client secret. All right. But what is this domain? Well, this domain is the domain that you have for your tenant. Tenant is like the application now you are logged in, the dashboard. So in fact, you can have your domain as like whatever you have. Like let's say this is my domain and place your domain here. For me, like it's gonna be something like that, right? EU.auth0 or something. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can copy that from your tenant. So this is going to be your domain. So let's actually have that properly in place. It will be a match. I'm just gonna look at this right now. There you go. So then it's gonna be this dot auth0.com. This is my tenant. But for sure, that's fine. You can just like copy this here, your tenant, your domain. So I'm gonna just replace this here, domain, and then here is the point. Well, you can define client ID and secret ID and get it from secrets on events. This is the event. You know, we already talked about it in the previous video. So you get the secrets from event, from runtime, but from the environment. What is the secret? That's the good point. This secret is, in fact, to initiate this application and do everything that you want, you need to create a machine-to-machine application. How can you do that? Well, it's very simple. You go to application, open that, go to application. I'm going to open it in a new tab. And then in the new application, create a new application. All right, so just give it a name. I'll just kind of name it like M2M That's it. And then say this is machine to machine and create this. Well, this part is very important. You want to authorize machine to machine application. You need to say which kind of API you want to authorize with that. Well, if you say nothing, well, this machine, this client will have no permission to do anything. You need to give some kind of permission. There is one API that is already defined in Auth0, and that is the management API. You can just open this and then give the management API access to this client. Well, that's very good. But then what kind of permission do you need? Well, you can either give all permission, probably not a good idea, or you need to have some certain permissions here. You need to define like read, for example, users. I want this client to be able to read users from the API. Well, that's good. What else you want to do? I want to just update user. I want this user to be able to update users or maybe roles. You will find a bunch of them here, in fact. Like a lot of these, APIs here. Read, write. The good practice here to give as less permission as possible. So what is needed? So that's the best probably practice. Once you do that, then you authorize. I already gave the permissions that I need because I want to use this client for updating my user, assigning some role. Okay. Good. So now if you go to the API, you will see you have access to this and you also have enough permissions. Well, that's very good. That's nice. That's what I wanted. So let's go and now go back to our action. Doing that, you need to define your audience. And the audience is in fact the API of Auth0. Well, which is deployed under your tenant, your domain. I will talk about it shortly. Don't worry about it if you don't get it right now. I will write it right away. So then, and then you need to have scope. Let's actually define it and talk about it. So then let's say I'm going to have a response here. And then you're going to have like an Auth0. Well, let's not make it complicated. Then you're going to have an Auth0 client dot client credentials grant. There you go. And this is going to accept two important parameters. The audience, I will talk about it shortly, and the scope. The scope is like what you want to do with this, right? And I will show you how you even give this scope to this, client. In fact, this is going to be the client, like the application that you created. You need to give some certain permission to that. The management permission, API permission. We'll talk about it shortly. So then the audience in Auth0 is very simple. So because you want to modify and send some requests via, API. So the API version right now, as of recording, is HTTPS, a domain, and then API v2. And in fact, in JavaScript, you need to use backtick. So this is the audience. Well, that's good, but what kind of scope? Well, what you want to do? I want to read users and I want to update users. These are the scopes that I can define, and these are the permissions that you need to give to that client. All right, now I gave the permission, I gave the scope, everything is fine. Now that's the things. I'm just gonna need to wait for this response, which is good. So now I have the response here. What is this giving me? Why did I do that? Because I need access token. I need access token to communicate with my, like the backend API in this case, the domain that I had, right? So I defined my audience and a scope, and I got an access token back with credential grant. You remember probably credential grant. Again, you can come back to those theory in the beginning of the series and look at the credential grant, how it works. So let's now go and get the API token. So the API token will be access token, right? Respond.access token. Now I have access token here. That's nice. Then here is the time that you can start creating a management client. A management client technically is coming from the Auth0 SDK, helping you to somehow like managing, API easier. You can even call the APIs directly if you want, but management API from SDK just makes it very easy. How? Let's call it management. And then I'm going to say, well, that's something that's coming from Auth0 SDK, says management client as a constructor, and it accepts some parameters. So this is a constructor. You need to initialize it with new. So then you're going to have domain. Then that's my domain that I define on top. That's good. And then I'm going to have token. You say, what is the token? That's the API token, like this access token that you received. Well, so far so good. Now I have my management client completely ready. So I can move on to the next part. What is the next part? The logic that I want to do for assigning the role. What I want to do, it's very simple. So my logic would be check if the email is ending with @mjcoffee.app. This is showing me this is a user, this is my employee, because this is my domain, for example. And if not, that is going to be customer. I'm not going to add any admin role here though. So admin role, I can go and assign myself manually, for example. Well, or maybe you can come up with other, logic here, but just want to make it like a simple logic. Let's see if it's working. How can you get access to email? Well, that's on events. You already are in post registration, right? So you already have a user on event that is going to have an email because that's mandatory. And then you're going to have an end with your end, well, end with is a function in JavaScript on any string that you can say it will match something that you pass to it. And so end with @mj coffee dot app. So in this case, if this is true, this is going to be my employee. So therefore, what I want to do is I have management, right? The management that I created, right? So then the management is giving me a function named assign role to user. All right. That's very simple. And that's actually a like a promise or feature in JavaScript. You need to wait for that. So then assign a role. Then you need to give what is like, what do you want to do? You need to define two things here. The first argument is going to be the object for defining the ID of user. So it's going to be ID event user dot user ID. That's good. And the second one, the second argument to this is an object defining roles that you want to assign to that user. Let's do that. I'm just gonna go and do roles. Going to be an array. You remember in the beginning of the video, I mentioned from the customer and employee roles that we created, copy the ID. Yes, that's the things. You need to just copy those ID. I just copied. I'm gonna paste this here. All right. What if my customer does not have, like, everyone who is logging to the admin does not have this? Well, in fact, then you can say else. Then in this case, assign the other role. Well, that's customer. Simple. That's it. That's pretty much it. So, well, let's review quickly. You get an Auth0 SDK. You have your domain for Auth0. You have you initialized the authentication client with the secret. You created an application machine to machine. That's good. You got the client ID and secret from that application. Then you requested for client credential grant. That's nice. Passing some scope and audience. In this case, it's very specific to Auth0. You have API v2 and scope. You also gave the authorization permission to that client that you created, this one, like you gave enough permission. And then you got an access token. Nice. Then you created a management client. Again, passing some parameters with access token. Then on management, you have an assigned role to user. In fact, what it does, it's going to go in that URL calling some endpoints, says role, assign roles or update user. It's kind of like a REST API probably. Update user with these values that you are passing. That's pretty much it. This is our logic. When it's going to happen? On post user registration, when user is registering. So just go ahead and deploy this. And now go back to your custom action. Go to flows, go to post registration, and now you will be able to go to custom. You will be able to, in fact, choose the action that you have, drag and drop it here. That's pretty much it. Now, when user is registered, after that, before the entire process in the flow is done, we're gonna check and assign a role. Let's look at this right now, how it will work. Now let's go and test it out. So let's go there. Now I'm in the application. I'm just gonna go and log in. Well, let's say I'm going to sign up right now. Well, that's the things. I'm just gonna go and say, well, my user is like cool2 at Majid Hajian. Oh, sorry. There we go. And then I give a password. That's good. So now in this case, that's everything looks fine. Then I'm going to go continue. So I'm logged in. Very nice. But what happened right now, it's interesting. If I go to user management, I should have a new user, cool2. I already had cool1. Look at this. If I go to now roles, I have a customer role where I did not have this role previously for cool1. There, well, I actually had customer role because I gave this role previously. So now every user is logged in, they're gonna get this role. But here is the things. I said I gave this role myself because you can come to each user and say, I want to assign another role. So whatever roles you have, maybe this is a customer and an admin. Well, you can go ahead and assign that, but no other user will get that because, well, you have admin here manually assigned. But that's good. So now my customers are here, and what I can do, which in fact I did, is I also created like a user with @MJ Coffee app. Well, that's another way of doing that, and that user is going to create, receive the employee role. That's nice. We added some kind of logic here. It might not be a very strong logic for sure, but I mean, the fact, the things that I wanted to show you was how you can use these flows and how you can create roles and permissions. But now, here is the things. These are the roles, but we have not created any permissions for these roles. It's just the role, no permission assigned. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about how you can create custom permissions and custom APIs for your application. Now you learned how you assign role to users. In the next video, you will learn how to create custom permissions and assign those permissions to those roles. And at the end, we add those roles and permission in the next video to our request ID token and access token, so as a custom claim. So bear with me in this video. I'll see you in the next video.